各位觀眾大家好，歡迎收睇26分鐘見證實錄。信用評分係所有加拿大人喺同銀行或者係其他金融機構接觸嘅時候咧，經常都會遇到嘅一個數字。但係有唔少國民咧反映佢哋嘅信用評分經常都出現錯誤，並且咧冇辦法咁準確反映到佢哋嘅實際信用狀況。究竟係乜嘢一回事呢？等我哋一齊去了解一下。
How do you reduce credit score of someone who has never borrowed any money? Like, it's very common if you're not lending money, if you're not using your credit card, if you don't have loans on you, you'll have a bad credit score, right? But how does that make up? Like, just because I don't like borrowing money does not mean I'm bad at returning that money. So I think it's kind of twisted that the only way to increase your credit score is to borrow more money. And I think it's kind of rigged.
Hello， 我係 Eric 啊，今日有啲咩幫到你啊？
Eric 雍係大溫地區從業多年嘅房屋貸款經理，佢表示有好多喺本地買樓置業嘅客人，或者係新移民同埋唔習慣使用信用卡嘅人，當佢哋準備貸款買屋嘅時候，有時會發現自己嘅信用評分出現問題。
我哋啲客好多時嚟到我哋嗰度，都或者會有少少嘅信譽嘅問題。有好多都知，但係有一部分會唔知嘅。咁唔知嗰部分咧，多數揾翻出嚟嗰陣時咧，佢哋會記得起，係喎，3年前或者有啲乜嘢嘅事，或者開咗個新嘅電話，跟住cancel 咗，但係收咗個單咁樣。咁佢覺得個單唔 justify， 唔啱，跟住就拖唔還，咁樣就會令到佢個 credit 佢嘅信譽報告好差噶啦。你銀行會睇到，你3年前爭緊或者20蚊、30蚊咁樣，但係拖咗成3年都未還過嘅話，佢哋就會覺得，哇！呢個人嘅信譽其實都有少少嘅問題，或者唔借得過咁咯。
而除咗由於客人自己嘅疏忽導致信用評分降低之外，銀行以及相關機構嘅工作人員疏忽，亦都可能造成個人信用報告出錯。
我諗最差嘅 case 咧係我見過嘅係。有時啲銀行咧，因為做嗰啲手續唔係太過complete，或者佢哋拎走個 mortgage 嗰陣時漏咗啲嘢，咁我哋拉個信譽報告嗰陣時咧，個貸款仲喺個客嘅戶口嘅，但係其實間屋已經賣咗，個貸款已經冇咗噶啦。多數都係做房屋買賣嘅，對時間嗰方面咧，因為全部都係合約，要 subject remove幾時交屋咁如果個客俾唔足夠嘅時間我哋咧，我哋好遲先至發現你擺咗個 offer 啦，跟住發現原來你個信譽係出咗問題嘅，咁樣就要搞呢啲信要去返原本嘅銀行係需要一段嘅時間，或者會 meet 唔到佢哋需要嘅 deadline， 咁樣賣唔到間屋。
此外，亦有銀行分行經理指出，由於有住同本地人唔同嘅書寫習慣，華裔移民嘅信用報告經常出現同其他完全不相關人士嘅信用報告混淆嘅情況。
好多客人佢哋會去行摩嘅時候會有人叫佢哋去申請信用卡咁佢哋可能有時嗰啲資料咧就好簡單咁樣去寫一寫，或者係話我冇嘢做嘅，或者係我個譬如出生日期個年月份會調轉咗咯，咁呢啲咪會有啲小問題，到喺個信用報告出嚟嘅時候就會唔 match 唔啱喎，同我哋嘅系統入邊，咁變咗呢啲就會有時會係令到個客戶會需要再做多少少嘢，就譬如我哋要攞佢個身份證明文件再證明翻佢嗰個出生日期係啱嘅，同埋有好多時會有，因為中國人啦，咁佢哋啲名咧同埋性別咧，即係個姓名或者係個名咧，可能會好相似嘅，但係佢哋有好多時未必會將佢哋個出生日期或者係佢個工卡號碼寫埋個申請報告嗰個申請書入邊，咁嘅時候就會有時有啲多咗另外一個客人嘅資料就會咁樣出現咗喺度。
而呢一類信用報告出錯嘅投訴貼文喺本地嘅英文同中文社交媒體論壇之中都經常出現，而且廣泛被討論。
Equifax 真係太唔專業啦！我淨係努力咁樣改正我嘅檔案，我要點做啊？
TransUnion 將我嗰份信用報告同人搞亂咗啊！
鬧爆 TransUnion 啊，將我同我阿哥嘅資料撈亂晒。
TransUnion 同 Equifax 嘅個人信息錯誤，試咗好多次都揾唔到更正入口。
TransUnion 錯誤信用記錄搞到我冇一份工啊！
鬧爆 Equifax 啊，簡直吐血啊！信用報告無緣無故就查咗人哋個名。
房屋貸款經理 Eric 表示，由於大部分嘅客人喺第一次接觸信用系統嘅時候，個人信息都係由銀行或者係其他金融機構工作人員經過人為輸入之後，再上報俾信用機構，因此出現類似嘅人為錯誤，亦都好難避免。而信用報告一旦出錯，更正嘅過程通常亦都比較費時費力。
咁其實如果你個信譽報告出咗問題咧，最好就係揾翻錯嗰個公司嚟改翻佢嘅，因為如果你去信譽報告嗰啲公司咧，佢哋其實係第三者嚟嘅，佢哋係收晒所有嘅資料之後咧，俾銀行或者俾唔同嘅公司話俾你聽嘅信譽係點，佢哋唔可以幫你改翻原本嘅錯誤。如果你個錯誤係一間公司、一間銀行嘅話咧，你最好就係去翻嗰間銀行問佢話：嘿，點解我多咗呢個貸款喺度嘅，或者呢個債務唔係我嘅喎？佢會幫你 check， 跟住有時因為啲中國人嘅名好相似，佢哋或者唔小心撚埋咗一齊，咁你揾翻佢哋改翻佢，佢咁就會打翻封信俾你。咁嗰封信咧，咁就可以解釋翻發生咩事。咁你 hold 住嗰封信，第日有咩問題嘅話，可以拎翻出嚟。
佢亦都指出，由於加拿大兩個比較大規模嘅信用機構，客戶遇到信用報告出錯嘅時候，如果唔能夠喺第一時間發現出錯嘅源頭，咁樣更正相應報告通常需要花1個月甚至係更長嘅時間。咁佢直言，普通民眾之所以自行更正信用報告嘅時候困難重重，其根本嘅原因係信用機構嘅服務對象其實並唔係普通民眾。
其實信譽報告嘅公司佢哋係可以做多啲 service 嘅嘢嘅，但係佢哋嘅客源其實係銀行。咁你佢係幫你 check 呢個客嘅風險係幾多，而話翻俾個銀行聽嘅。咁我當然知道有時揾呢啲大公司，佢哋又唔係專門幫人民嚟做個 service 俾佢嘅，佢哋根本係幫銀行噶嘛，佢哋唔係幫人嘅嘛，所以佢哋唔開呢啲 office 嘅原因係因為佢哋唔係喺嗰度賺錢。對於如果出咗問題嗰陣時咧，都係去翻原本嘅公司係最快啦，因為佢哋嘅客人其實係人民，咁你錯咗嗰陣時去翻原本嘅公司咧係最快最 efficient 嘅。
而對於普通公眾，一旦信用報告出錯，應該點樣解決呢？從事銀行分行經理嘅 Matthew Lee 亦都俾出佢嘅意見。
如果係 mix 咗嘅時候，咁其實唯一可以做嘅就係個客人咧需要打電話去喺加拿大有2間呢個信用報告嘅公司啦，咁就係包括有 Equifax 同埋 TransUnion 嘅。咁佢哋打電話去同佢哋講話，呢個唔係我嚟嘅，咁佢就會可以幫你將呢一個報告分開2個人。佢哋要證明嘅嘢就係頭先我講嗰3樣嘢啦，名啦、出生日期啦，同埋 social insurance number。好多時我哋都會幫客人一齊打電話去嘅，因為好多時打電話去嘅時候，佢一定要認證個客人係邊一個啦。咁我哋就用一個銀行嘅 partner 一個同夥伴嘅身份，咁係幫佢一齊去有啲咩嘅資料，話呢個資料其實唔啱嘅，咁佢哋需要係點樣去更正翻嘅。咁我哋會同個客人一齊去做呢個步驟嘅。銀行係有另一個部門係可以將銀行登記上去嘅資料去改變嘅。咁譬如話，如果係銀行話，我哋係你本來係交咗呢個費用嘅，呢個信用卡嘅費用，但係點解話我遲交啊？咁呢個我哋銀行做咗個審查之後，係喎，呢個係有個問題出現嘅時候，我哋可以直接聯絡呢啲嘅信用報告公司，係將佢攞翻出嚟或者係更改嘅。
而對於信用報告之中存在爭議嘅內容，點解更正需要花一段嘅時間？本國2大信用機構亦都對此作出咗回應。加拿大 TransUnion 研究與諮詢部門主管 Matt Fabian 就強調，佢哋作為第三方信用機構，只係負責收集同埋記錄用戶嘅信用信息，用作製成信用報告。因此，錯誤嘅源頭並不出在喺信用機構本身。
In some cases, so when you contact any credit bureau, for verification, you're going to provide some information and say, here, first of all, we want to make sure that we can confirm that the person that's, making the inquiry or the dispute is that person. So part of it will be just, identity management and just validation that you are you for security and personal reasons. And then the second piece will be if there is a dispute and there's something on the credit report that you think is inaccurate, or you have a different, for example, if it's personal information or if it's even, a transaction that's on there, the credit bureau might ask you for additional information to support, that claim. And so you'll send that in. The credit union the credit bureaus can't necessarily change the report on their own, right? We need to contact, in many cases, contact the creditor for verification. So after TransUnion receives that request, they'll either contact the creditor for verification or change they might change the information directly if it doesn't require verification. But in certain cases, depending on the type of inquiry or the type of thing you're asking, they will be required to get verification from the lender. And that in those cases, sometimes that turns into a back and forth where, there's a discussion between the consumer, the bureau, and the creditor, and it can take a long time.
加拿大 Equifax 消費者權益資深合規專員 Julie Kuzmic 亦都對信用報告出現混淆嘅原因作出咗解釋。
I first want to start by explaining how it can happen that there could be errors on a credit report. Often, if somebody has a common name and maybe lives in a large condo building, so there are hundreds of people who have exactly the same address, the only thing that is different is the unit number, so postal code, street address is the same, it can happen that the wrong person's data can land on a credit report. So it's relatively rare, but it does occasionally happen. And that's one of the reasons that we really encourage people to look at their own credit reports, which again, you can do for free. You don't have to be paying for it in order to check that information. But if there is something that's inaccurate, you want to know about it before you're trying to renew your mortgage or qualify for the mortgage the first time.
佢亦都表示 Equifax 已經喺過去幾年之中進行咗技術升級，大幅縮短咗處理時間。而公眾如果有求職或者係買樓等嘅緊急需求情況之下，亦都可以告知客戶服務之後進行優先處理。
All that information is available on our website. You can do it either electronically, so we have a secure form of transmission, because we do need to make sure that the person requesting a change is who they say they are, and they're not trying to commit identity theft, for example, and get access to somebody else's credit report so that they can use that information in a fraudulent way. So we have a secure electronic communications platform so that you can send the required documentation, the background, and it depends on what the dispute is. For some of them, we then need to go and double check with the lender to confirm that this was placed on this person's report in error. Some of them we can update right away. Again, it really depends on the specific details. So that is such an important step, and we really do take that seriously and prioritize getting those things right. You can also, we do have a call center. You can use the phone and talk to an agent. They typically will direct you either online or to print the forms or mail in the information for people who aren't online. That's another option as well. It's just not quite as fast transmission as it is when you're doing that through the online platform.
信用記錄唔單止影響貸款申請啊，仲同租屋啦、揾工作等生活各方面咧息息相關㗎。信用評級係根據邊一啲嘅標準嚟評估啦？信用機構又係點樣獲取個人信用記錄嘅呢？唔同嘅信用機構之間嘅報告又有啲乜嘢差異啦？我哋下一節翻嚟繼續探討。歡迎翻嚟節目時間。信用報告啊，係描述個人財務狀況嘅重要文件。唔同嘅信用機構咧就會產生唔同嘅報告。國民啊，應該點樣建立並且維護良好嘅信用記錄呢？ 又應該點樣去避免信用記錄之中嘅錯誤呢？跟住落嚟，我哋一齊去睇睇。對於信用評分同信用報告嘅定義，加拿大 Equifax 消費者權益資深合規專員 Julie Kuzmic 同加拿大 TransUnion 研究與諮詢部門主管 Matt Fabian 分別分享咗佢哋嘅解讀。
When we start talking about credit scores, we need to take a step back and talk about credit reports. So there are two main credit bureaus in Canada, which are Equifax and TransUnion, and many of the lenders and creditors, credit card issuers in Canada report data on each of their account holders to those credit bureaus. So that's payment data like, are you paying your Visa bill on time? Do you usually carry a balance? That information gets reported to the credit bureau, and then it gets placed on your credit report. So over time, the credit report grows with different information about credit accounts that you have. And what a credit score is, it is a mathematical calculation that is based on the information on the credit report at the time the score is calculated. And the purpose of the credit score is to predict the likelihood that you will pay your bills on time.
Credit scores draw on information found in credit reports to arrive at this 3-digit number on scales that vary in range depending on who produces the score. And the higher the 3-digit number, the better your score. And I think, generally they're all based on models that the credit bureaus will individually develop. And they're updated frequently based on information that comes in from the various lenders. So if you have relationships with 2 or 3 different lenders, say you have a credit card with a certain bank, yet you have a mortgage or an auto loan with someone else, if those are all reported into the credit bureau will assemble all that information centrally and be able to refresh that score.
而 Kuzmic 亦都指出，個人信用評分區間係300到900分之間，每個信貸機構有自己特定嘅標準分數線，而信用評分亦都會根據個人嘅信用活動隨時浮動。佢認為公眾不必要過度關注分數嘅變化。
Credit scores aren't a judgment of a person or how good a person they are. Good people can encounter difficult circumstances in their lives, and lots of people have that happen and recover from a difficult credit situation. So that's absolutely possible. But also, I want to highlight that if you're in that highest possible range, and that's usually about 750 or 760 or higher out of 900, that is the best possible credit score that you can have. So if you and I, let's say we happen to go to the same bank at the same time and apply for the same credit card, and let's say you have a score of 880 and I have a score of 780, that's 100 points different, but we're both in that excellent range. On the credit score alone, the bank sees us as identical. Even though there is that 100 points between us, it doesn't matter where you are in that range. It's just the fact that you are in that range. And I like to highlight that because there are a number of people who get really concerned. They're tracking their score regularly and they see, oh, something has happened because I went from 860 to 840 and this is terrible. But it is not terrible. You are still in that excellent range for credit scores. And it is expected that scores do fluctuate a bit from day to day as new information gets reported on the accounts that you have and so on.
至於影響信譽評分嘅因素，佢哋兩人亦都提出咗佢哋嘅答案。
Your payment history in terms of how many times have you missed a payment or gone delinquent on a payment over, a series of, several years. How recent that was. Is it that you missed a payment maybe 3 years ago but haven't missed one since? That might also impact credit quality. And then things like I mentioned, some of the public record. Are there any liens on any of your home or any assets that you've had loans against? Have there been any judgments like a bankruptcy or a consumer proposal that you've been involved in, and how long has that been? And so a lot of all those things go into the credit report. In terms of what affects your score, it's a combination of all those things. It's a combination of basically your credit history, how long have you had credit, what credit have you had, so your experience with credit, but also sort of their performance. Again, have you been paying on time? Have you taken on, and how much credit you have, how much outstanding balance is there, and how much are you utilizing? You might have a credit card or a personal loan or a line of credit that has a pretty large limit, but you're only using a small part of it. And that also goes into it.
Keeping in mind that the purpose of a credit score is to predict a behavior, and the behavior it's trying to predict is paying bills on time. So what the credit score does is take into account the factors on the credit report, which tend to be most predictive of future payment behavior.
此外，佢哋亦都指出，信用查詢分為硬查詢同軟查詢，公眾需要注意區分兩者嘅不同。
A hard inquiry, also sometimes known as a hard pull, generally occurs when a financial institution, like a lender or a credit card issuer, checks your credit when making a lending decision. So at the point that you're applying maybe for a mortgage or a credit card, and they're typically looking to authorize, that you're going to get approved for that, or a credit limit increase, something like that. And so that will become a record on your credit report. And so a hard inquiry is, it will be something that affects your credit score, and it can be something that it will be captured in your credit report, but it could affect your credit score in that it will be something that's recorded because it's you asking formally for credit and whether you're approved or not. A soft inquiry typically occurs when a person or company checks your credit as part of a background check. So sometimes that could be, your rental. For a hard pull, I should qualify that lenders need a consumer's permission to do a hard inquiry. Soft pull, they don't necessarily need it. So in some cases, if you've already got an established relationship, let's say you've had a credit card with a lender for a couple of years, in that case, they will sometimes do what's called a soft inquiry just to check on how your credit is behaving. Is it still the same as it was? Is it getting better or getting worse? A soft inquiry does not necessarily affect your credit report. The inquiry itself will not show up on your credit report, and it doesn't affect your score. And that's the real main difference. A hard inquiry does affect your score. A soft inquiry does not.
There's what you see on a credit report and what you see on a credit score, and then what the lender sees on a credit report and what the lender sees for a credit score. So starting with the credit reports, you will actually see more information on your credit report than a lender will see. So there is a difference there, but it's not the difference that many people think that the lender is seeing more than you are. It's the other way around, because as a consumer, there are a number of protections in place where we are entitled to see what information the credit bureaus have about us. And the main difference between the version that you see yourself and the version that the lender will see is that only you can see the soft inquiries that are on the credit report.
而從事銀行分行經理嘅 Matthew Lee 亦都提醒，信用分數同信用報告只係申請信貸嘅重要資料之一。銀行喺審核客戶嘅信貸資格嘅時候，亦都會根據其他相關嘅信息進行綜合評估。
其實我哋做貸款咧，通常我哋有個叫做 5C 係5個 C 嘅，咁 credit 係其中一個啦，另外一個就係 capacity， 佢可以還款嘅能力，由佢嗰個收入嚟講，睇下可以還款嘅能力係幾多。另外一個就係佢嘅 character， 呢一個人嗰個嘅本身佢係咪一個成日好準時還錢嘅，定係成日都遲還錢嘅？跟住我哋有個 collateral， 究竟呢一個係咪有抵押，定係一個冇抵押嘅貸款，亦都係有一個要考慮嘅。第四樣就係我哋嗰個叫做 capital， 佢本身有冇譬如話好多 RRSP 啊、tax-free saving 啊、定期啊，咁變咗銀行睇到嘅時候就會覺得，我就算係冇抵押借俾你，有問題嘅時候，原來你都有好多後備喺度可以去還錢嘅。咁呢個就係我哋唔係話淨係睇一樣或者係睇某幾樣，其實我哋通常係成個5個 C 咁樣嚟去到睇。
此外，佢亦都建議新移民同本地尚未建立信用歷史嘅年輕人，應該盡早申請信用卡，以便建立同維護自己嘅信用記錄。 好啦，今集嘅節目時間呢又差唔多啦。咁如果觀眾對我哋嘅節目有啲乜嘢意見嘅話，係好歡迎大家以電郵嘅方式同我哋聯絡㗎。我哋嘅電郵地址係 mag26@fairchildtv.com。如果觀眾想上網重溫今集嘅節目，亦都可以上到去我哋嘅網站3w.fairchildtv.com， 點擊節目重溫一欄就可以睇得返㗎啦。下星期同樣時間再同大家見面，晚安。